What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Jada here, back with another video. So today we're going to be talking about yet another TV show, and I am trying to figure out how to say the name of this show because it does have a swear word in it technically, but I think we're just going to call it Rap Shh for now, okay? So today we're going to be talking about the show Rap Shh over on HBO, and it was actually created by Issa Rae, which makes complete sense when you actually watch the show. The characters, the storyline, it seems very Issa, at least what would come from her brain. So I was definitely entertained. I haven't personally seen many reviews or people talking about this show ever since it released. I think that was season 1 back in 2022, and now we have 2 seasons out. So I felt like talking about this here on the channel. So if you guys have seen the show, I'm hoping that you would have before watching this video, but I'm basically just going to be glazing over everything that has transpired in these 2 seasons and also share my thoughts with regards to the characters and the overall plot. So let's get into it. So it actually has a 100% rating over on Rotten Tomatoes, which I have never seen before. It also has a 79% upvote on Google. Now, in terms of the write-up on Google, it says 2 estranged high school friends from outside Miami reunite to form an all-female rap group hoping to make it in the music industry. So I think that sums it up pretty well. Now, when it comes to characters, there's 3 main ones. We have Mia, who's played by the rapper Chameleon. Also, Shauna, who's played by Ada Osman, and lastly, Chastity, who's played by Jonica Booth. So those are kind of the 3 main ones. Obviously, we have other characters who keep reappearing, but they don't have, at least in my opinion, as much screen time as the 3 characters that I mentioned. So the 2 estranged high school friends that I just mentioned are Mia and Shauna, and they hadn't really been speaking to each other ever since Shauna kind of went to college. Shauna does eventually drop out of college, but she actually had a boyfriend at the time in college. So in some ways they were trying to make this relationship still work even though they weren't seeing each other that often. And it doesn't really surprise me that eventually they do break up because it just wasn't working. And she also at the same time was trying to work this job at this hotel while trying to still post this like conscious rap music. And I think when it comes to that type of music, you definitely start to form a very niche following, which isn't a bad thing. It's just that when it comes to the music industry, it could be very hard to break into it and also be seen by these music execs as someone that they want to invest into because the following is so small. So yeah, it could be very interesting trying to break into the industry in that way. And I think eventually Shauna has that realization. But what gets me about Shauna is that she's such a walking contradiction. One minute she'd be talking about how crappy the world is, how we shouldn't be talking about doing like criminal things and stuff like that. But the thing is, while you're working at this hotel, you're scamming people. You're working with Maurice to steal people's credit card numbers. So it's just kind of like, how you in one breath trying to make this conscious music, try to teach people how to do the right thing and be a better upstanding citizen, and you're doing this stuff. It's not making sense. So eventually, like I said, Shauna breaks up with this boyfriend of hers. She's feeling all down and out, and she at some point meets up with Mia, and this is, like I said already, her estranged friend because they haven't really been talking. But Mia is a single mom. She's been trying to in some ways hustle. I think at one point she was doing like maybe OnlyFans type of work, and it just seemed like she was really trying her best to obviously provide for her child, but in kind of the best way that she knew how. But it probably just wasn't the best way like overall. But either way, that's what she was doing. And she eventually meets up with Shauna, and it's kind of an awkward meeting because, you know, Shauna just kind of left her by the wayside low-key. But eventually they get drunk, they're having a good time, and they go live on Instagram, which becomes definitely their thing. Okay, they like to go live, they like to be on social media, and basically they start messing around and they come up with this song, Seduce and Scheme. I think Shauna was obviously inspired by her life and what she was doing behind the scenes, but you know, anyways, they come up with the song Seduce and Scheme, and people really liked it, and it started going viral. But they weren't actually like artists, they weren't a group yet, and they were really trying to figure things out. And eventually they end up meeting Chastity, and Chastity is another interesting character. I do think that Shauna and Chastity are actually pretty similar. Now, even though they speak differently and present themselves differently in the physical sense, they are technically the same person in my opinion. I think they're very impulsive and they make a lot of mistakes where I'm like, why would you do that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what was the sense behind that, right? But I do think that in some ways Chastity has a little bit more control than Shauna does. But yeah, either way, I still think they're kind of very similar. Now, Chastity is actually a PIMP, okay? So she is doing that type of work with these women of the night, and that's pretty much how she was making her money. And it seems like she's definitely been hustling for a little while doing this type of work. And when she meets Shauna through Mia, eventually, you know, she finds out that they're trying to get into the music thing. Maybe she starts to push that she could be their manager, and I was like, do you even have any experience? You know what I'm saying? Like, that is something that's necessary in this industry, to have experience. It's like, you being a hustler is great and all, but that could only get you so far. So eventually she does become their manager, so to speak. And they're really trying to figure out how to get into the industry. They're trying to figure out how to actually make it big, because that's what their overall objective is. However, Shauna, I think, eventually starts to have a more difficult time, because she's realizing that you kind of have to, in some ways, bend and kind of come out with the type of music that the industry wants to push in order for you to eventually push the music that you personally want to release. So that's kind of how that goes, unfortunately. So she eventually kind of turns her back on the whole conscious rap path, and she starts talking about seducing and scheming men, pretty much all the ratchet stuff that you would hear in female rap these days, that's like really being pushed to the forefront. So basically them copying that, and you could see that she's really struggling, because people start commenting like, okay, why are you doing this? Why are you coming out with this type of music? What happened to the old you? That type of stuff. So she starts feeling very guilty about it, but she notices eventually that it is paying off. So she continues on with it, but eventually in her personal life things start falling apart, because she does start seeing Maurice, the same guy that she was scheming with. She does eventually start seeing him, and they start messing around, and she obviously starts getting connected to him in that way. But eventually that scheme they were doing or trying to pull with the credit card information from all these people, after these people started obviously figuring out that all these charges were popping up on their accounts, they eventually trace it back to the hotel that Shauna and Maurice were working at. They start getting questioned, and things are definitely closing in a little bit on Shauna and Maurice in that aspect. Now we get into season 2, and that's where things get really interesting, but things are still kind of picking up a little bit for Mia and Shauna with regards to the music. But again, it feels like Shauna keeps doing things to kind of sabotage them, and one of those things being when they had a performance. Everything was going okay. They performed their song, or songs, I think, at the time, because I think they recorded more. And she decides to go out on a limb, try to do a little freestyle, but instead of just doing something cute, she decides to try and do like the whole conscious rap thing that she was doing before all of this happened. And I was like, girl, this was not the time or the place. That was not the energy that they were giving. So the crowd is definitely not impressed, and yeah, it ends up being really embarrassing for both of them, because Mia is a part of this group now. So from there, it just feels like Shauna is having a constant battle with her inner self, and I think she just needs to figure that out in order for them to actually see some constant success. But what gets me though on top of that is Chastity trying to manage them, and because, like I said in the beginning, she is that P word, she's trying to balance doing that work and also trying to push Shauna and Mia's music, and basically trying to pitch them to these managers and all these like higher ups. And I'm like, this is not going to work out well. But eventually things come to a head. Chastity ends up getting beat up because she tries to take this other PIMP's, I guess, block or whatever, and ruining his little operation that he had going on. So he beats her up, pistol whips her, and eventually Chastity's uncle, who is also a pretty well-known but retired gangster at this point, goes over, beats up this man, and also kills him, takes him out. And I'm like, okay, that was really over the top. And even Chastity kind of realized that. She was like, listen, I don't really want to do that part of the business. But the thing is, if you're going to be involved in illegal stuff, it's just kind of like that kind of comes with the territory a little bit. But Chastity doesn't really have the stomach for doing stuff like that. But either way, she, figures that whole thing out. But it still feels as though Chastity is losing her grip on everything. She eventually meets this girl who works with, I think, Red Bull or something like that. And you could see that the girl was really trying to put out some serious game. Like, she was really flirting hard with Chastity, but Chastity was not picking up what she was throwing down. She was more so interested with the fact that she worked with Red Bull and she had this amount to possibly help out Mia and Shauna. So she was looking at it from a business standpoint. But eventually they do end up getting entangled with each other. But at some point, Chastity does manage to finally get some type of deal possibly in the works for Mia and Shauna with regards to their music. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier, I think it was earlier in season 2, Shauna's friend Francois from college, who is now some type of music manager or exec, I don't know what his actual position was, but he did something in music and he was managing another artist at the time of them reuniting. And he was like, oh, why don't you come on tour with my artist? I'm promoting her. You guys could be like her opening act. And they agreed, but the thing is, Francois was like, yeah, we're not really going to be pushing a huge budget for y'all. This is mainly for my artists. So y'all gonna have to handle a lot of y'all finances and come out of pocket for a lot of the stuff that y'all would need on tour. So that was definitely a moment where it was like, sir, really? Eventually they do part ways in terms of a tour because they didn't really too much care for the artist that Francois was promoting as the main act. It just seemed really fake and forced. She was a white artist trying to do rap music, and it just felt like she was just doing a little bit too much pandering to actually garner an audience that would be interested in her music. Mia and Shauna start making their rounds, trying to meet with music execs and all that, people in the entertainment industry, to try and see if they could push their own career. Because Chastity, because she didn't really have that much experience, she wasn't really doing that great of a job in terms of actually finding someone that would genuinely be interested in actually promoting them and really getting them somewhere in their careers. So eventually Shauna ends up meeting this rapper by the name of Lord AK, and he's a pretty big deal, it seems, but you can tell that he definitely has some mental issues that he's struggling with, and that definitely becomes very apparent, unfortunately, when he tries to pretty much off himself via fire. But he does end up getting saved. But I do think that because of the burns being so severe, they had to put him in a coma. So Shauna, being the last person that saw him before him doing that, definitely was a traumatic moment for her, and she really felt guilty about it. But what I think is very interesting about what happens after is that one of Lord AK's, I guess, friends, so to speak, but ends up being some guy that was really just using him, to be honest. He puts out this message and Shauna didn't like it too much, and that's when Shauna goes on this rant. She was out at, I think it was Mia's daughter's birthday party, trying to clear up everything, and people eventually start taking Shauna's side. That's when they start really getting this attention on them. And they had just recorded a new song with Partisan Fontaine, thanks to Francois, because Francois ended up dropping his other artists and coming back to Mia and Shauna, basically saying, hey, this offer's on the table, I want to work with you. But the thing is, you know, even though Francois was like, this song is fire and we should drop it right now considering all this attention is on y'all, I don't want to work with Chastity. It just seemed like there was always this tension between Francois and Chastity, because it felt as though Chastity was always kind of getting in the way, which I could agree to some extent. I do feel like Chastity was always kind of pushing herself into things where it was like, girl, just chill. You know what I'm saying? Like, she would ruin things for Mia and Shauna. So basically Francois is saying, you know, if you're gonna move forward with this song, you got to move forward with me and only me. Considering Chastity has been with them on this journey for so long, obviously Mia and Shauna are having difficulties trying to figure out what they want to do, because eventually Chastity does get what she wants from this woman who she starts seeing, who was working with Red Bull or this music company or whatever that was connected to Red Bull. I don't remember. But either way, she does get this woman to, in some ways, present some type of deal to Mia and Shauna, and they're really liking the idea of that. But the thing is, now Francois is holding this song hostage, so it's basically them being stuck between a rock and a hard place, because it's like, even though Chastity finally managed to get us in contact with this woman and we're really pursuing things finally and getting things off the ground, we don't have any music to put out because Francois is holding it. Now they're trying to figure out, well, do we even want to work with Chastity anymore? Because it seemed like her PR PIMP business was kind of getting in the way of her actually managing them. Mia and Shauna do eventually tell Chastity about the whole music situation. And because of that, Chastity does go back to this woman that she was, you know, seeing and also kind of using at the same time. She kind of ruins that relationship because she was really trying her hardest to press the issue to really get an answer out quickly so that they would move ahead with things with the Red Bull people. But she definitely embarrasses this woman in front of her client. She was like, yeah, I'm cutting ties with you, Chastity, because you don't know how to act and I can't deal with that. And I don't blame her. I would have done the same thing. Chastity, she ends up getting cut because Mia and Shauna were like, listen, we're just gonna go with Francois because he seems like the safest bet. And honestly, again, I would have done the same thing because Chastity seemed all over the place all the time. Like she was always doing too many things at once, trying to balance too many things at once and not doing a good job with balancing those things. So at the end of the day, even though it was kind of hurtful, obviously, to Chastity, who does eventually go to one of their ops, okay, one of the enemies, she starts working with this person, talking to this person. I don't know what's gonna come of that in season 3, but my prediction is she's gonna find her way back into this music industry. I think she's gonna become a problem for Shauna and Mia, low-key. But regardless, in season 2 at the very end, we see their music video, Shauna and Mia, for their song, their new song that they had recorded. I think that moving forward in season 3, it's going to be interesting to see how Shauna develops in terms of her choices, because it just seems like her life choices leading up to this point have been so sucky. Also, I forgot to mention that her and Maurice, they kind of figure out that Maurice should just take a plea deal and she would just focus on her music so that she could eventually, I guess, provide him with a better life after he gets released. I think he was going in for like a year. Actually, I think 2 years. 2 years. I think he was going in for 2 years, which is still a pretty decent amount of time. Obviously, it's nothing like a lifetime, but at the same time, 2 years of your life is still time gone. So because Maurice was making this sacrifice, he just thought, because I'm doing this, I would expect you to at least show up to what I invited you to. He invited Shauna to a going away party for him that his family was putting together to basically send him off, I guess, to prison, so to speak. But Shauna at this point, instead of actually just messaging him back, was going on this tangent and going on this rant, which obviously was a good thing for Mia and hers careers. But at the same time, the fact that Maurice is making this sacrifice and you're not actually showing up for him to at least send him off, it was like, okay, you're pretty much setting yourself up at this point. If he decides at some point to speak out, it could ruin your career now. So it really just seems like Shauna just keeps doing things and saying things to kind of ruin her life in a way. And I just don't understand her. It's kind of similar with Chastity. I do think that she keeps trying to make things better, but in turn makes things worse. But y'all let me know your thoughts on this one down in the comments, and also what you would predict for season 3. Obviously, there's probably some things here and there that you guys might want to bring I maybe forgot to talk about, but that's pretty much the main gist of the storyline. But y'all can let me know if y'all thought that I missed anything important down in the comments. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.